journalism grant making since then. We have focused in recent years on youth journalism, mid-career training, and First Amendment programs. Our vision is that if we invest in programs that improve content, build audience understanding of news, and protect press freedoms, we will have a more active and informed participation in the civic life of our communities. But we're here today to discuss news literacy. Literacy is the ability to use critical thinking skills to judge the reliability and credibility of news reports and sources. It enables citizens to become smarter consumers and creators of fact-based information, and it helps them develop informed perspectives and the navigational skills to become effective citizens in a digitally connected society. Today, however, we're loaded with information. You'll notice the photograph here, which we thought was pretty catchy. Information off the internet is like taking a drink from a fire hydrant. And it's easy to get lost in the rush of digital information that hits us on a 24/7 basis. But consider what it would be like without news. Imagine a day without news.
Imagine your day without news. Will you need an umbrella? Are you ready to vote? Why did your taxes go up? Transparent and well-sourced information can give you perspective in more ways than one. But finding the facts that you need and separating news from noise is harder than ever. We need a guiding light to filter information that is useful. News literacy means thinking critically to judge the reliability and credibility of news reports and sources. And when you add other types of literacy, you end up with a much brighter day. Financial figures are not as confusing. The commute is not as chaotic. And Village Hall, well, it's not as tall. When you engage with reliable news, the knowledge spreads to your neighborhood, your city, and your world. And it's not just about what you read, see, and hear. You can share your world and connect to the information you need to make smart, informed decisions. Young, old, and in between. Businesses, schools, and nonprofits play a part too. Today, we need ideas that allow accurate information to rise above the noise we encounter in our homes, at work, on the street. We need to remember why news matters. Together, we can illuminate Chicago, morning, noon, and night. It's time to turn on your flashlight.
I hope all of you were able to hear the volume on that piece. It was produced for us by Carrie Porter of Medill and Patch.com. Now I would like to ask Program Officer Janet Liao to review our reasons for investing in news literacy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before we get into the details of why news matters, I would like to provide a little bit of context about our theory of change. You'll see here, our theory of change is if we invest in news literacy programs, then Chicagoans will become smarter news consumers and ultimately more engaged as citizens. Ultimately, we imagine a city where hundreds of thousands of Chicagoans of all ages and backgrounds are engaged in a variety of activities that enable them to access quality news and connect with the information that they need to become more active in their communities. So the goal of the Why News Matters initiative, which is a 3-year, $6 million grant-making program, is to build upon the strong news literacy youth and teacher training programs that have been the core of our programming since 2009. Now, in addition to our youth work, we hope to expand the initiative to engage broader audiences in the Chicago area. Our goal then is to significantly expand news literacy efforts throughout Chicago, and this is where you come in as media organizations, high school teachers, universities, 2-year colleges, community organizations. we seek to do is to expand news literacy to new audiences, and to do that we need partnerships with organizations that have expertise working with our target audiences, which include youth, adults, and seniors. The second part is to fund a portfolio of high-impact projects, and we are soliciting ideas in 4 areas that include, but are not limited to, education and curriculum, training and awareness, engagement, research, and evaluation. In just one second, Mark Hallett, our Senior Program Officer, is going to go into more detail for each one of these sections. So we're interested in your ideas on how to build upon the existing work that you're doing and to reach the audiences that we outlined above for this important work in news literacy. Now, Program Officer Mark Hallett will delve into the examples of news literacy work in 4 potential funding areas.
Thank you, Janet. This is Mark Hallett. So I'm basically going to walk through the 4 sort of categories of or areas of funding that we're exploring doing through this initiative for 2013, but also for the 2 years after that. So we're looking at this as a long-term initiative. So the first area is the area of education and curriculum. And so since we started funding the area of news literacy back in 2009, we've basically taken a 2-pronged approach to it. And that is one area is in the classroom, and the second is largely after-school programming. And so the work in the classroom has really been about analyzing news, learning to look at issues of credibility, to think better and deeper and with a framework and vocabulary about the news and information sources that you see on a daily basis. The second area has basically been youth, that is, in our case, largely teenagers, high school-age teens, learning to produce their own journalism, to explore issues, produce media, etc., and by virtue of doing that work, exploring those same issues of news and credibility and sourcing. So one of the things that's really driven us in this area is the fact that we've seen over and over again that there's a great deal of hunger on the part of students to learn to do this better. And the data that you see on the screen is just one more example of that, that youth are aware that they're bombarded with information and really want to learn how to better analyze it and make sense of it. So an example of this work with young people in the area of news literacy and education is the News Literacy Project founded by Alan Miller, a former investigative reporter with the LA Times, DC-based group, now working in a number of cities, very inspiring work, largely partnering initially with classroom teachers, but increasingly also with after-school programs, community-based groups, etc. Their work is with teachers, with after-school programs. They often bring journalists in to talk about the work that they do, the challenges they face, the decisions they make. So the second area is news literacy training. Now, I know education and training may sound like they overlap significantly. For our purposes here, education is really largely with young people, and when we talk about training, we're really thinking more about professional development for teachers and others, but also adults themselves. And I have to say this is a big departure for us, or a growth area for us, and that is that we've worked with teenagers to date in this area, and now we're really looking to work with teens, but also to go upward in age and work with adults of all ages and even senior citizens. So in the news literacy training area, you can see on the left there's a graphic of a news literacy training for adults, and on the right is a Train the Trainer workshop. We're really excited about expanding Chicago to include more age groups. But here you have a great quote from Dan Gilmore of Media Active. He wrote the book Media Active. None of us are fully literate unless we are creating, not just consuming. I love that. I mean, that speaks to literacy in general. You wouldn't say that someone was literate if they could only read but hadn't learned how to write. And we feel the same way about journalism, media making, and news literacy. So then the third area of funding is this area of awareness and engagement, and this is another where we're really excited to see the types of ideas that we get in from organizations of all sorts. So awareness and engagement could mean marketing campaigns, it could mean a television program that helps expose people across the city to learning to unravel news through this whole news literacy framework. It could mean creating web portals, apps. Maybe it would be a theater group doing something, maybe online gaming. We're really open to ideas to see what sort of innovative ways Chicago's public, and it could be the broad public, it could be specific niches of public, can be really engaged in this whole area. And here, this is a great infographic, not an interactive infographic, but a beautiful illustration of some of the findings of Harvard's Berkman Center on how young people are using digital media. When this presentation is done, if you want to go back and look at it, there's actually a lot to be learned here. They've been doing some really intensive and forward-thinking work at looking at how young people use the internet and information. One of their findings, for example, was that young people are turning more and more to YouTube to do their basic information searches, more than Google, actually, in a lot of cases. And so we're seeing that this area is very fluid, and there's always a lot to be learned. And so finally, the fourth category of funding here is research and evaluation. And we're really excited about this. And part of the reason we decided to make it an actual category of grant is that rather than think about evaluation as an afterthought or just a peripheral activity to each project, we really want to make this be one of the foundations of the work that we do moving forward, so that each of the projects, but also the entire portfolio of projects, will help us learn a lot more about this area. And I have to say, this is really exciting for us. We have a lot of questions. We want to know how news literacy resonates with young people in classrooms and out. We want to know how you can engage people of all ages around these questions. We want to know if there are approaches that might work better than others with certain ethnic groups, for example, or certain age groups. And so we really see this as being a key and important area as we move forward. And so this is just an example of a group that's doing some important thinking about measuring the work that they do. And so this is Stony Brook University in New York, the Center for News Literacy. And so this graphic is basically a few of the areas that they're working. So this isn't a universal finding for the country in general. This is specifically the program that they've been doing at Stony Brook and looking at how it has effectively helped students improve their critical thinking, their civic engagement, deepen their news values, and bring more coherence to their news consumption. So finally, I'm going to turn you back to Clark Bell, and we're going to talk about how to apply to the program.
Before we start talking about the details, remember that you can type a question into the chat box at any time, and we'll answer your questions in a few minutes. If you look at the who, how, and why of what we're going to be doing with Why News Matters, we're going to attempt to work with 501c3 nonprofits. However, we'll consider individuals and businesses who partner with not-for-profit organizations as well. How to get started? Well, you can do one of two things. You can either go to whnewsmatters.org, which will direct you to the Foundation's website, which will then take you to our request for ideas, or you can go directly to the McCormickFoundation.org website. Let's look at a few of the real red letter days coming up. The deadline for submission is April 2nd. We'll make our selections in April, and by mid-June, selected applicants will receive their invitation to submit full proposals. Grant winners will be notified in September, and the money will start coming down to you in 2013. What we're going to be asking for in this letter of inquiry is your idea, the audience, the timeline, the budget. We'll ask about your mission statement, your expertise in organizing such a program, what you would do about evaluation. So those are the things we're going to be looking for. But now let's bring it back full circle. The notion of news literacy is as old as the nation itself. Let's paraphrase a statement by Thomas Jefferson that knowledge of current issues is essential to an informed citizenry in a democracy. And then finally, we as a journalism program work within the framework of the entire McCormick Foundation. We believe that knowledge and understanding of issues will lead to an informed public, which will lead to an active and engaged citizenry, and it's kind of an endless flow. That's our presentation for today. Now we're interested in hearing your comments or questions. You can put them into the chat box, and we look forward to hearing from you.
So at this point, if you have a question, like Clark said, feel free to type it into the chat box, and we will help moderate the questions. Or if you would like, please go ahead and unmute your phone at this time, and we can open it up for questions, comments, and discussion. So I have a question here from Deborah Gersh-Hernandez from the Reporters Committee. Thank you, Deborah. The question is, are you looking to start with only Chicago area focus or something that can be adapted elsewhere?
We hope that the programs are adaptable. We would like to have Chicago be a best model for news literacy. We will be taking input and ideas from national organizations, and as long as it applies to a Chicago audience, we'll give it serious consideration. But our goal in this is to replicate, to spread the information, but we felt to gain the highest impact, let's concentrate in the people in our own backyard, and that's Chicago.
And I see here a second question from Deborah, a more technical one. It says, if we are submitting 2 ideas, are separate applications required, and does the site allow for that? And I guess I'm going to go ahead and take that question. Yes, we welcome people to submit as many ideas as they have. The site does require you to submit separate applications. So what I would recommend is once you log in, you fill out one application and then hit submit, and then you must exit and log in again to submit another application. You will be assigned a different identification number for each application, so hopefully that will help you keep track of the various applications you may wish to submit.
And if you have any technical questions or having trouble with the form itself, Aaron Smith is available. Best thing to do is email him, but we will get back to you, I promise. asmith@mccormickfoundation.org, who can help with any of the technical issues in the application process.
Great. We have another question here. This one is from Rachel Hudak. Can projects in the area of education and curriculum serve adults, or do they have to be in schools with youth? I'm going to have to Mr. Mark Hallett.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for the question. That's a great one. I would say that we definitely, we put out those categories, the 4 categories of grant making, just to try to be helpful to show people the general thrust of the areas that we're looking for. So in a sense, I wouldn't get too sort of worried about them when it comes to details like this. We definitely are interested in seeing your ideas for working with adults as well as with youth in terms of curriculum, education, etc. So we tried to put out, and I know they're awkward in their own ways, but education and training, we're really looking for projects that engage people of all ages and backgrounds. So I hope that's helpful, but that's the main answer, I think, on that question.
And just FYI, We do have a running list of frequently asked questions about the Why News Matters initiative that is posted on our website under the Journalism Program section. So if you have questions later or have a question that you'd like us to answer and add to this frequently asked questions site, we would be more than happy to do so. And to access the FAQ, simply go to McCormickFoundation.org/journalism.
I'm going to share some fresh information with you. People are going to ask us, well, what's the criteria for selection here? What are you going to base your decision-making on? And this is a new initiative. I can't say that a 1 to 50 scale with 5 categories, but we are going to be looking at the relevance of the proposal to the program priority areas. We'll be very interested in what you consider or hope the impact of the project will be. Certainly, we are interested in serving underserved populations and making sure the program reaches a diverse audience. We're looking for originality. We're looking for an organizational track record or expertise. And really important to us is the ability to build on the existing work and knowledge of the news literacy field. It's a fairly new field, but as Mark pointed out, there's some really interesting data and research that have already come out. And a very important issue is going to be the ability to collaborate. We intend to have convenings of our grantees, both by subject matter and the entire grant-making portfolio. So the ability to work together, I think, is going to be key in our selection basis.
Great. We have another question here. This one is from Curtis Lawrence. Will this initiative replace the traditional journalism funding of the past, or will it be an addition?
This is Mark. Hey, Curtis, great question. So here's the way we're thinking about it. Our basic framework, which has been in place for the last 5 years, is basically, or 4 years, is that we're basically funding initiatives in content, audience, and rights. To date, the audience category has basically been work with teenagers in youth journalism or in news literacy projects. And so we're going to continue to use that framework of content, audience, and rights. Where this overlays that is basically that the Why News Matters work is going to be the key wraparound for our entire audience category of funding in Chicago. And so basically, if someone has been partnering with us in the area of audience, it's really important that they take this new approach and this filter and this way of looking at the city into account in considering what they're going to propose for. It's also possible that there will be content initiatives or rights initiatives that fit into the Why News Matters framework. In other words, there could be an initiative with news organizations engaging with their readership or viewership or listenership in a way that helps people better understand the mysteries of journalism. And so that would be very much a Why News Matters initiative, or there could be a rights initiative that has to do with working with everyday people to better understand the rights that journalists need to exercise independent journalism, et cetera. And so it's possible that there would be content and right initiatives that fall under this rubric. But basically, this is the audience category's new sort of approach. I hope that's helpful. I know it's fluid, it's a little bit confusing, but that's how we're looking at it right now. We're still going with CAR, but this is the framework we're looking at, primarily the audience work.
And Mark, I think that what we're really looking for are programs that generate or fertilize or produce results with the participants so they become more civically engaged and civically active. Now, how do you define that? There are a number of benchmarks such as volunteerism, attending meetings, media habits, voting registration, actual voting itself. So that's part of the real key. We're trying to find answers and benchmarks.
We have a question here from Harriosa. Where would be the best starting point for literacy studies, and I'm assuming also news literacy studies, already published? Are there any training or train-the-trainer programs that are currently available? I'm going to start to answer that, and Mark, feel free to add on if you have any other thoughts. I would recommend starting with a recently published study by the Berkman Center called the Youth and Social Media Lab. They just came out with a really interesting study looking at the engagement and media habits of young people and how they relate and use and consume media. In terms of train-the-trainer programs, this summer we're actually partnering with Stony Brook University in New York. They are coming here to Chicago to put on a 2-week news literacy training program for teachers and educators and whoever else is interested in learning about their news literacy approach and curriculum. And that's going to be happening this summer. We'd be happy to send out additional details about that training if you're interested. And it looks like we have another question here from Deborah. Are you thinking of specific or general grant dollar parameters for the different categories?
Not really. We certainly feel that our average grant now is in the $75,000 to $100,000 range, but we have many grantees at $10,000. We have $300,000 or $400,000 a year. So we're gonna construct a portfolio or package. I imagine that there will be a handful of over 100,000 projects, but many of you will be able to start off with smaller, $25,000 to $50,000 projects. There is no range.
Good. Are there any other questions at this time? And also feel free to unmute your phone if you'd like to just ask a question on the phone, or if you have a comment, feel free to unmute at this time.
Hello.
Hi, who's speaking?
This is Curtis. I didn't think my phone was muted, but I was just checking. So.
Hi, Curtis. Thanks for joining us.
But I'm following both online as well. But I just wanted to say thanks a lot so far for this information.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate everybody's participation and hope that our first webinar experience is sufficient.
And by the way, on that last question about research into this field, because that's a great one, and of course we want to see it as in a way, as sort of a starting point for having creative juices getting going, right? We'll send out a link to everyone to the Berkman Center's recent literature review on youth media and digital literacies, and it's very thorough and it is really inspiring to see all of the work that has looked at news literacy, information literacy, young people engaged in youth journalism and youth media work, etc. The focus is on youth, and as you all know, we're looking at also working with different age groups here, but I think this will help some of you to get a quick grounding in what's already been done.
Those of you in Chicago, we're going to repeat this type of process, but also have an in-person audience and post a video of it afterward. The dates we're looking at are March 16th, where our featured guest will be Dean Miller, who's the director of Stony Brook Center for News Literacy. And then on March 27th, Jean Rosenberg from Baruch College will be here to discuss her work in youth journalism and news literacy. As I said, we will have the ability to register and bring folks here to our office on North Michigan Avenue in Chicago, but we will video and post it later. This is our first run through this, and we look forward to learning more and hearing about your questions and thoughts, and we will build this as we go along. But to come up with ideas during the month of March is very exciting to us.
I have a question. This is Karen Jaffe from the NewsHour. Will this webinar also be posted along with the PowerPoint graphics, et cetera?
Karen, thanks for your question. Yes, we do plan to post both the presentation and a recording of this session on our foundation website within the week, early next week.
Great, thank you.
And McNeil Air is an excellent example of a national organization, if you will, that does work, but is trying to work with a younger audience, trying to work on news literacy issues, and I'm sure they're going to come up with some great ideas how we can tie this back directly to test whatever they want to do in Chicago and roll it out, because certainly national and international fairs are of great interest to all audiences.
Thank you.
And let's see, we have another question here from Deborah. Is there an equivalent report that you would recommend that focuses on adults? And this one, I think we've seen a lot of research from Pew. What we're trying to do with this initiative as well is that there is really a lack of research and evaluation initiatives around news literacy in specific. So we're hoping to garner areas that we can help develop additional research around. Are there any other questions at this point, either via our chat box or feel free to comment directly via phone?
All right, well, we've had interesting 30 minutes here. We've learned a lot. We hope you're better informed on what we're looking for. As I mentioned, as you go through the application itself and you have any technical issues, contact Smith. We will have additional programs on March 16th and March 27th, and we look forward to your ideas. Thank you very much, and have a great weekend.